Good afternoon to everyone. Today class is Eia Methodologies, right? First of all, we are going to Eia methodology. Before, we want to discuss about criteria for selection of Eia methods, right? So we have 5 steps here. First one is general. Right, we have 5 steps here. First one is general, and second one is impact identification, and third one is impact measurements, and fourth one is impact interpretation and evaluation, and finally fifth one is impact communication, right? So let's we will discuss about one by one. First one is general. Right? So in general, we have 3 steps here: simplicity and manpower, time and budget constraint, and also flexibility. So simplicity. So this methodology, it should be simple so that the available manpower with limited background knowledge, it can grasp and adapt it without much difficulty, right? And manpower, this methodology should be applied by a small group with a limited budget and under time constraints. And flexibility, this methodology should be flexible enough to allow for necessary modifications and changes through the course of the study or any other projects. Next one is impact identification. So we have here 4 steps. Those are comprehensiveness and specificity and isolation of project impacts and timings and duration. So first one is comprehensiveness. Right? So this comprehensiveness should be sufficiently comprehensive to contain all possible options and alternatives, and it should give enough information on them. That is to facilitate proper decision making, right? The next, specificity. So this methodology should be identify specific parameters on which where would be significant impacts. And then next, isolation of project impacts. So it should be suggest procedures for identify. So identify project's impacts as distinguished from future environmental changes that is produced by the other causes, right? And lastly, timing and duration. So this methodology should be able to identify, right? Identify accurately the location, right? Accurate the location and extent of the impact on a temporal scale, right? So these are the impact identification. And third one is impact measurements. So we have here also 4 steps: commensurate, units, and explicit indicators, and magnitude, and also objective criteria, right? So first one, so these commensurate units, right? So it should have a commensurate of units, sets of units, right? And so that comparison, it can be made between alternative and criteria, right? So this is the comparison between alternatives and criteria. And next one is explicit indicators. What is this explicit indicators? So it should suggest some specific and measurable indicators that is to be used to qualify impact, right? Qualify impacts on the some of the relevant environmental parameters. And magnitude. Magnitude, it is provide for the measurement of impact magnitude. So it is defined as the degree of extensiveness of scale of the impact. So it has distinct from impact importance and defined as the weighting of the degree of significance of the impact. And last one, objective criteria. So objective criteria, it should be based on objective criteria, and the criteria should be stated explicitly, right? Is stated explicitly. So these are the impact measurements. And fourth, what is the fourth one? Impact interpretation and evaluation. So we have some of the steps here: significance, explicit criteria, and portrayal of with and without situation, and uncertainty, risk, and depth of analysis, alternative comparison, and public involvement, right? So first one is significance. So it should be able to assess the significance of major impacts on a local or regional and also national scale, right? So this is the significance methodology. And explicit criteria. So this criteria and assumptions employed to determine impact significance, it should be explicitly stated. And then next one is with and without the situation, right? So this methodology should be able to aggregate the vast amounts of information in raw input data, right? And uncertainty. So this is uncertainty of possible impacts is a very real problem in the environmental impact assessment, EIA, right? So this methodology should be able to take these aspects into account. The next, risk. So risk, it should be identify impacts that have low probability of occurrence but high potential for damage and loss. So this is the risk methodology. And also depth of analysis. So this depth of analysis, so this the conclusions derived from the methodology, it should be able to provide a sufficient depth of analysis and instills confidence in the users, including the general public, right? The next, alternative comparison. So it should be provide a sufficiently detailed and complete comparison of the various alternative readily available for the project under the study. And last one is public involvement. So this methodology should be suggest a mechanism for the public involvement in the interpretation of impacts and their significance, right? So these are the impact interpretation and evaluation. And last one is impact communication, right? Impact communication. Okay. First one is affected parties in setting description in summary format and key issues and also compliances. So affected parties. So this methodology, it should be provide a mechanism for linking, right? Linking impacts to some specific affected geographical or social groups, right? So these are the affected parties. And next, setting. Okay. Setting description. So it should be provide a description of the project setting, that is to aid the users in the developing an adequately comprehensive overall perspective. The next, summary. Summary format, all of you know about the summary format. So it should provide the results of the impact analysis, that is summarized in some of the format. So that will give the user. So who range from the lay public to the decision makers and sufficient details to understand and it have confidence in its assessment, right? The next, key issues. So it should be provide a format for highlighting the key issues and impact identified in the analysis, right? And complaints. So it is one of the most important factor. So in choosing methodology, so it is whether it is able to comply with the terms of reference, TOR. I already told in first class, TOR, terms of reference, that is established by the controlling agency, right? So these are the some criteria for selection of the EIA methods, right? And also next one is so EIA methodologies, right? So whenever a new development project, so that is planned, which is likely to affect environmental quality, and it is necessary to carry out EIA. So these EIA methods are to determine whether the project under consideration follows the jurisdiction of the relevant acts and regulations. And if so, whether it is likely to create a significant environmental disruption. So the project should follow certain rules so that are made, right? So it should follow the rules and regulations that are made by the government, right? So there will be a minimum environmental disruption. So if so, an EIA is undertaken and the environmental impact statement, so that is prepared. So in many countries, right? Many countries, this environmental impact statement is open to public scrutiny and it is reviewed at public hearings. So the society or the public, it should know the what is the impact of the project on environment. So it is made public and scrutiny. So it is made public and the hearing is public, right? So that everybody has the right to understand what are the consequences on environment, right? So, and finally, so these 4 outcomes of the project, whether it has to accepted, it has to be accepted with amendments, or it has some alternative proposal is accepted, so that has to be done, or the project is rejected. So these are the 4 outcomes of the project. So depending upon all these things, finally we will come to the decision, right? So this is the methodology evaluation. You see here, these are the criteria: checklist, overlay, network matrix. So I will tell this methods, right? You see here. So we have certain types of methodologies. So impact assessment methodology, the range from simple to complex, right? Simple to complex. So, and also progressively, it is changing from static and piecemeal approach. Piecemeal means P-I-E-C-E-M-E-A-L. So it means not done according to a plan, but not done at different times in different ways, right? So this piecemeal approach to the one that reflects the dynamism of nature and the environment. So this methodologies, it is an approaching and overall management perspective requiring some different kinds of data formats, and also it is varying level of expertise and technological inputs for the some of the correct interpretation. So it is important to understand the drawbacks in order to determine which of the methods are most appropriate, right? So now you see the list of environmental impact assessment methods here. We have 8 different kinds of methods used to find out the impact, right? So first one is Adhak method, and checklist, matrix, and network, overlay, cost benefit analysis, environmental index using factor analysis, and finally simulation or predictive. So these are the 8 methods in the EIA. So which are used for impact identification of the various developmental activities or impact of various development activities on the environmental issues, right? So we will discuss all these methods one by one. First one is Adhak method. So Adhak method is nothing but simple method. So it is based on subjective environment impacts on the, what is that, broad aspects, right? So this method is very useful when our time period is limited with lack of required scientific information, right? So we can say that is a broad of area is a possible impact by listing composite environmental parameters. So for example, if you are doing a project, so any study of the flora and fauna, so it is also involves assembling our specialist to identify impact in their area of expertise. So environmental areas are soil, water, etc., etc. So that is taken separately. So these statements are qualitative and it could be based on subjective assessment, or it could be qualitative interpretation of quantitative result. So you see this table is representing the illustrative Adhak approach to environmental impact versus environmental area, right? So environmental areas are environmental effects like the environmental area. So those are wildlife, endangered species, and also natural vegetation, exotic vegetation, grazing, social characteristics, and natural drainage, and also groundwater, noise and air quality, visual description and services, and open space and recreation, and health and safety, and economic values, and public facilities, and also finally confirmation about the regional plans. So all these environment areas are environmental impact have no effect, and it may have the positive effects and negative effects, beneficially and adverse, or it may be problematic, or problematic may be short term or long term. That means environmental impact reversible or irreversible, right? So this is the other approach, environmental impact versus environmental areas, right? And advantages of other method. So it is simple and easily understandable, and it is the experts of a respective areas guide EIA, and overall environmental components are enlisted. So these are the advantages of Adhak method and disadvantages of Adhak method. So it is requires expert person, and the identification and prediction of short and long term impacts are poor because it examined on guess basis, right? So and also it provides minimal guidance for impact analysis while suggesting subjective area of impact, and also not good for organizing and reviewing and also interpreting data. So these are some of the disadvantages of the other method. Next one is checklist method. So checklist, it means listing of potential environmental impacts, right? Listing of potential environmental impact. So we have discussed earlier various environmental impact during a development project, right? So first of all, we have to find out what could be the various environmental impacts on the project, right? So this checklist method is used to assess the nature of impacts, that is, its type such as adverse or beneficial, short term, long term, no effect or significant effect, reversible, irreversible. So that we can find out the checklist, right? So you see here this one, right? Then next, there are 5 types of checklist methods. So first one is simple, and second one is descriptive and scaling checklist, and scaling weighting checklist, and also finally questionnaire. So these are the 5 types. And simple checklist. Simple checklist are simple list of environmental parameters and no information needed regarding the magnitude or importance of the impact. So this checklist, it can recognize resource or environmental components which are affected due to some of the particular activities. So in simple checklist, just we are going to erase the question, and in front of the question, we will mark right or wrong here, right? This one, or wrong. Or yes or no. So for that particular question, right? So yes means it is confirmed that impact is there. Or right means, right or yes means, what is that? So impact is there. So no means, no or this cross marks means there is no impact here, right? So this is the table. So in simple checklist, it can also give idea about type of impacts like short term, long term, reversible, irreversible, right? So we have shown various resources like air quality, water quality, landscape, ecology, noise, and traffic, right? And potential impacts from construction activities are written in terms of site clearance and earth moving, lay foundations, and import, what is this? Materials, and cumulative impacts. Okay. So this tick mark confirm that impact is there. Then next, no means, this is cross means leaving this or empty box, that means no impact here, right? So this is the simple checklist method. And descriptive. So descriptive require information on magnitude or importance of impact as well as indications on prediction methods and indicators. So descriptive checklist. So it is extension of simple checklist, and it is background information of each aspect. So simple checklist only have aspects, whereas descriptive checklist give both aspects and their background information also. So these descriptive checklists are strong for impact identification of environmental parameters and also incorporate. So impact measurements, interpretation, and evaluation of impact as well as in decision making process. This is important, decision making, right? So it guides mainly how to assess impacts. So this descriptive checklist give us more information about the nature and the magnitude of the impact rather than just identification. So in this, where the question is asked or question is written, and for that the descriptive answer is written also. So what will be the, it is to the potential environment impact of this particular activity, that is written in descriptive manner. So for example, you see this table is represented, which includes past, present, future. These 3 actions. So this checklist can also discuss the cumulative impacts due to past activities and project and other nearby sources, right? This one. So in that resources, groundwater, air quality, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So this is the descriptive checklist. The next one is scaling checklist. Scaling checklist, it is similar to the descriptive checklist, right? So, but with additional information on subjective scaling of the impact on the some of the environmental parameters. So, it is similar to descriptive, right? So, the meaning of scaling is rating or grading system, right? Rating or grading system. So for example, you see this here, for the rating of the water quality, that is best is 5, right? Best is 5 or best is here 3, right? You see here habitat quality and species and size or abundance and duration and magnitude. So one is habitat quality in beneficial impact. So one is low, right? And 2 is medium and 3 is high, right? So this is the scaling checklist, right? Next one is scaling weighting checklist, right? So weighting means giving importance, right? Giving importance to specific parameters. For example, water quality. Water quality, it may be of prime importance in one of the project as compared to some of the land area, right? So hence here, along with scaling and weightage is given to water parameter so that it becomes more important in evaluation, right? So scaling checklist is represent scaling checklist with the information. So the structured equations are used to weight the environmental parameters. Last one is questionnaire. So questionnaire, so the checklist. So checklist is prepared on the basis of what is that? Questionnaire for the public consultation here, right? So it gives information about the stakeholders awareness and responses for the proposed project. So the questionnaire is further evaluated in spreadsheet to find the scale of impacts and weight of parameters. Those are based on the public opinion, right? So here we can see various questions or issues will be raised and various questions will be answered by using yes or no, or it may be later, right? Or maybe. So in this way, there would be a questionnaire of various environmental impacts, right? You see here, so some example noise. So will the project increase existing noise level? Is it yes or no or maybe, right? So in case it is yes, you can tick the mark yes, or no in case here, tick the mark this one, right? So this is the questionnaire or sheet here. The next one is, so you follow these like same as and vegetation and energy, transport and traffic, public service and public reaction. So yes or no or maybe, right? So this one. Next, advantages and disadvantages. So advantages of checklist is first one is simple to understand and use and good for site selection and priority setting and impacts can see on past, present, and future. Disadvantages do not distinguish between direct and indirect impacts and do not link action and impact. So these are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the checklist methods. And next one method is matrix. So matrix methods basically incorporate a list of project activities or actions and environmental conditions or characteristics that might be affected. So it means this method identify interaction, right? Interaction between various project actions and environmental parameters and components, right? So combining these lists as horizontal and vertical axis for a matrix allows the identification of cause-effect relationship between specific activities and impacts. So a simple interaction matrix is formed when project actions are listed on one axis, that is usually vertical, right? Vertical. And environmental impacts are listed along the some of the other axes, right? So the entries in the cells of matrix, it can be either qualitative estimates or quantitative estimates of these cause effect between relationships. So the later rate in many combined into a weighting scheme that is leading to a total impact score. Total impact score. You see here. Just 1 second. Hello? Cheppamma. So you see, this table is representing the matrix approach to comparing environmental impacts of actions on existing characteristics and conditions of the environments, right? So the existing environmental conditions, which is like the landforms, water recharge, climate, flood stability, stress and strain like earthquake, open space and residential, and health and safety, population density, structures, transportation, in the overall, it's the impact, right? So this is the existing environmental conditions, right? And the proposed actions, which is like on the modification of the habitat alteration of hydrology and drainage system in the surface of paying and the noise and vibration and urbanization and cut and fill and erosion control, landscaping and the traffic circulation. So these are the affected by the proposed action, right? So here the alphabet, the presenting the some different conditions or different impacts, like you see A letter, right? So this A letter here, you see here. So this A letter is the displaying insignificant low impact, not injurious to the land in the environment, right? And next B letter. B letter that is representing the measurable impact, but with the proper planning and building is not injurious to land, right? And then next C, this C letter. C letter is denoting the high impact on the environment. And then next D1. So D is impact on the environment, but considered good. And E, where is E here? So there is no E here, but I think okay, in case you have put this E is impact that will be detrimental to environment. What is that? Detrimental to environment. So this is the illustrative matrix approach to comparing environmental impact of the actions on existing characteristics and conditions of the environment. Some of the importance of matrices. So matrices are two-dimensional tables, right? So these facilitate the identification of impacts arising from the interaction between project activities and specific environmental component. So the entire entries of the cell of the matrix, it can be either qualitative or quantitative estimates of the impact. So these are the importance of the matrix. And advantages. So this matrix method is that is linked action to the impact. And also this is a very good method for displaying of EIA results. These are the advantages. And disadvantages, it is difficult to distinguish direct and indirect impact using this method. And there is some of the potential for double counting of impacts also, and significant potential for double counting of impacts. And next, it is qualitative in nature and does not refer to quantity of impact. So these are the disadvantages of matrix. And next one is network method. So network methods start with a list of project activities or actions, and then generate cause, conditions, effect, network. That is chain of chains of events, right? So the network method identifies the pathway of an impact using a series of chain between a proposed action and the receptor of an impact. So this method uses the matrix approach and extend. It is to include both the primary as well as secondary impact. So it is shown in the form of a called tree, right? Impact tree. You see this picture. So this type of method is basically an attempt to recognize that a series of impact, it may be triggered by a project action, right? Project action. And this method provides a roadmap type of approach, that is to the identification of some different order effects. That is, I think all of you know about the roadmap on the topo sheet. So all of you know about the topo sheet. So there is some of the roadmap is there, right? So this network method is also like that, right? So the idea is that is to start with a project activity and identify the types of impacts which would initially occur, right? So select each impact and identify the impacts which may be induced as a result. So this table are flow charts and impact tree. So these are used for analysis of the interrelationship between causes and effects, and it is enable the analysis of indirect and cumulative impact as shown in this figure, right? You see how it looks like. It is the impact tree. This is called impact tree. Impact tree, right? So this impact tree is used to identify cause effect linkages, and it is a visual description of linkages. So the impact tree shown for the visual quality, stream valleys, erosion, historical or archaeological, and also other, right? And how all these effects are interrelated to each other, right? You see this like this, okay? So advantages and disadvantages. So it is links action to impact, and it is useful to check second order impacts in a simplified form, and it is handled direct and indirect impact, right? So disadvantages, it becomes overly complex if used beyond simplified version, and it is completely qualitative in nature, right? So some difficult to distinguish and quantify and magnitude of the different impacts, right? And next one is overlay method. So overlay. So the overlay method is developed by Shapley and Fugel. So in the year of 1984 and McHarg. So in the year of 1969. So overlay methods involve preparation of a set of transparent, right? Transparent maps. So each map represents the spatial distribution of an environmental characteristic. What is the environmental characteristics? That is extent of dense forest area. Example, dense forest area. So the information on wide range of some variables, it will be collected for standard geographical units within the study area, which will be recorded on series of maps, typically one for each variable. So these maps will be overlaid to produce a composite. So the sets of transparent maps have information about physical, social, ecological, and aesthetic aspects. So those are land use and other relevant characteristics that is relative to the location of the project area, right? So that is to evaluate the degree of associated impacts, that is many project alternatives. It can be located on the final map, and validity of the assessment will be related to the type and number of parameters chosen. So normally that is to have some clarity and number of parameters that can be overlaid in a transparency map that is limited to 10, right? So these methods are widely used for assessing visually the changes in the landscape before and after the activity. So second one is can be used for preparing combined mapping with an analysis of sensitive areas or ecological carrying capacities, right? You see this figure shown in the superimposed maps here, right? So those are water, settlements, floodplains, and wetlands, land use, land cover, soils, and also composites, right? So these methods are spatially oriented. They can very clearly show the spatial aspects of cumulative aspects. So these maps are overlaid to produce a composite characterization of the regional environment. So impacts are identified by noting the impacted environmental characteristics. It is lying within the project boundaries. So the approach seems most useful as a method of screening alternative project sites or routes before detailed impact analysis. So these overlays, it can be useful for industrial EIA of any project for comparing land capabilities, existing and projected land uses, and road route alternatives, and also other under parameters and alternative levels of air quality conditions along with pollution control, right? So in past old techniques, old techniques in transparent plastic in different colors was used for mapping, this mapping. So, but nowadays we have GIS modern technique of the same activities done using what? Computer software, hardware, data, and skilled people. So these are the techniques that we use to carry out environmental impact assessment. And this is all about these methods that we use to carry out EIA. So this is the raster data, right? And this is the vector data. So advantages of overlay method, it is easy to understand and use. And this method, it has a good display and good for setting site selection. And disadvantages, it addresses only direct impact. And it does not address impact duration or probability, right? So these are the advantages and disadvantages of the overlay method. And next one is cost benefit analysis. Cost. So cost means spend money, right? Benefit means not only financial, it could be result or deliverables, right? So cost benefit analysis is a systematic process for identifying, valuing, and comparing costs and benefits of project, right? So it is a systematic approach that is to estimate the strengths and weakness of alternatives. So for example, transactions and also activities and functional business requirements or project investments. So these are the some of the alternatives, and it is used to determine options that provide the best approach, that is to achieve benefits while preserving savings. So this cost benefit analysis is a standard tool for what is that? Evaluating the economic analysis or trade-off analysis or investment of development of projects, right? So economic analysis takes into account the opportunity cost of resources employed and attempt to the measure in monetary terms, that is the private and social cost and benefits of the project to the community or the economy, right? So cost benefit analysis is a systematic process for what is that? Identifying, valuing, comparing cost and benefits of the project. So Now, what is the cost benefit analysis? Cost benefit analysis is an economic evaluation technique that compares the cost of the intervention with the benefit incurred. So, where the benefit is measured by monetary units, right? So, monetary units means the standard unit of value of currency, right? Value of currency. So, cost of the intervention. So, it means the cost associated with taking action or any treatment or any plan, right? So, that investment, the cost that denotes the cost related with the treatment or intervention, or you can say simply the investment, and whereas the benefit in a cart. So it means when you invest something, then you will expect some return from that. So this is the benefit incurred, right? So all the benefits and the cost, they are measured in terms of this monetary units, right? So that we can compare between the monetary value of benefits and the monetary value of cost. So cost benefit analysis simply an evaluation technique of economic value that compares the cost of the intervention. Means it is your investment with benefit in card, right? So this is the cost benefit analysis. So cost benefit analysis purpose. So we have two main purposes. So those are, first one is that is to determine if an investment or decision that is sound, verifying whether it is benefits outweigh the cost and by how much. So this is the first purpose. And second one is, it is to provide a basis for comparing project, which involve comparing the total expected cost of each option against its total expected benefits. So these are the two purposes of the cost benefit analysis. And lastly, I think sixth one, something. Okay, factor analysis method. Right? So let us talk about the concept of business in their environment. Environment generally refers to objects surrounding circumstances in the whole situation which affect someone or something existence. So however, in the context of business, environment refers to the factors which have a bearing on the working and functioning of the business. So it consists of all those forces, both internal, internal and external. So that affect that working of the business, it includes to the conditions, forces, events and the situations within which business enterprises have to operate, right? So business and its environment are closely related. What is that? Business and environment. So these are closely related to each other. And the effective of the interaction of two leads to business, that is to a success. So an organization, it can survive and grow only when it is able to keep pace with the changing the environment, right? So let us look at some of the definition of the business. So environment according two-wheeler. For example, environment according two-wheeler business environment, that is the total of all things external to the firms and individuals. So which affect their organization and operations. So another definition that is the business environment. So as environment factors of constraints, those are largely, if not totally, external and beyond the control of individual industrial enterprises and their arrangements. So these are the essentially the givers within Vista from a firm, and the management must operate in some specific countries, and they very often greatly from country to country, right? So the most important thing is the sectors are socio-economic technical supplier and comparators and also governments, right? So these are the some factor analysis methods. And next one is simulation. Simulation modeling is an analytical tool which enables the quantification of impact. So which can affect the environment by simulating environmental conditions. Often models use computer technology, that is to predict the chemical or physical effects of a particular action within the environment, right? So that will be different mathematical or physical models where it created simulating environmental conditions and it will measure the impacts. So a mathematical model, so it is lends itself to the spatial temporal analysis of aspects of the environment, such as air and water quality, water volume and flows, noise levels, and airborne deposition on soils and vegetation, right? So the prediction of models like other types of models including what is the socio-economic and species habitat models, and also export systems, so which allow the impacts of a project that is to be determined through a program of decisions, right? So for example, in environmental studies, we have some different kinds of models here, right? So first one is air quality modeling. So those are box model, and Bush and Plum model, and PTMAX model, and Valley models. So these are the air quality models. And water quality models, Quali model, and also Stanford watershed model, and also Battle, BATTELE, Battle Reservoir. So these three of the water quality model. And noise models. Noise models are highway noise model and attenuation model, and ecological model, and also visual model. So these models are very expensive, but we will get accurate results or accurate values, right? So this is the Eia methodologies. So today topic is over. So now the class is over. So I will take the class at 1:30, 3 o'clock, 3 to 4.